Welcome to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Variant O'Connor, and
I'm here.
and anonymous Facebook user. Yeah, we've got anonymous Facebook user on the show finally. No, it's Thomas Daniel Queeters joined the show to talk about his organizations and maybe a few other topics as well. So really excited to have him here today. And yeah, we're gonna jump into the show pretty quickly, folks. But just you know how it goes. We do the intro. We jump into the show in just a minute. And of course, if you're listening out there and you're like, man, why the heck are they doing this on a Saturday afternoon? It's because I'm going to be in Denver next week. So we're recording a bit early. And, also it's fun to be able to do this on a Saturday occasionally. You got, Mr.
Denver,
Queen
Colorado.
Here, Denver, Colorado. That's where I'm going to be.
Colorado is one of the first states
Marijuana
right to repair for wheelchairs.
Oh, is it? Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I mean,
USPIRG.org was the one pushing that.
Oh, that's great. I mean, there's some good things about Colorado. I know some people have mixed feelings about like Jared Polis and stuff. I kind of like him mostly for a Democrat, but
Kevin, I'll give him that. Like for a Democrat, the dude's okay. Like he's okay. It's just he's also not okay. That's all.
Hey, like we're compared to the rest of the party, right?
Yeah, it's like a low bar. This guy surpasses the incredibly low bar that we have available. Like, you know what I mean? Like he's on par with Ron DeSantis. Let's put it that way.
I wouldn't go there, but
you like him more than you like.
Man, like total lack of poker face. You just
finally
your emotions are like right on your face. Hey Shelly, thanks for joining us. Listen, we're gonna jump in just a minute. The topic of the show is not Jared Polis. It's much cooler stuff than everyday politics. So yeah, we're going to jump in about 10 seconds.
Now, an hour of clarity for exhausted people of our nation mired in toxic partisanship. Left versus right, us versus them. While we pay to keep our politicians fighting, how do we, the people, rise up and solve the great challenges of our time? We do it by embracing freedom and liberty. There may be no such thing as a free lunch, but this hour is as close as it gets. Welcome to A Free Solution.
All right, welcome to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Variant O'Connor.
I'm here. I'm definitely here. I'm all in.
Yes, and we also have a guest today. We have Thomas Daniel Queeter, and he's here to talk about some of the amazing work that he's doing to help people get access to mobility. He's here to talk about his organizations and what he's doing, because he's doing some cool stuff. So Mr. Queeter, would you mind introducing yourself, your organizations, and what your goal is? I want to like misrepresent it. Go ahead.
Well, thank you for having me. To clarify, one of the organizations is one that I founded. The other one is one that I volunteer for and has helped me out personally in the past. The Mobility Independence Foundation was formed to pursue the creation of open source designs for accessible technology. Our first main project is, of course, a versatile and modular power wheelchair. You all might be familiar with the situation that I went through. I had a great wheelchair. I needed a new one because it was old and beyond repair. And I fought 2 years worth of systemic battles to get approval just about 1 month after they stopped producing them. So again, if you're familiar with me, you probably know that the solution was crowdfunded voluntarism. Some libertarians that live near me, friends of mine, convinced me to crowdfund it, and we did. That began kind of a strange snowball. So now I've got this great wheelchair, but it's a machine, and any machine needs repairs. So I ran into situations needing repair. And as it turns out, I had already befriended the people who were capable of doing that.
The folks who are
Regular.
capable of making the repairs themselves.
Yes,
Yeah.
they're regular people, and this is a key thing, right? If you're working in a factory, manufacturing equipment, or in the case of Matt Lacey, our vice president, the personal hero of mine that has kept me moving since that first breakdown. He works at a 90-acre facility that produces locomotives. And it's his job to maintain all of the equipment they use to produce those locomotives. That means he's got a very wide and varied skill set. There are an awful lot of people in this world like that. We like to think of them as handy or capable, or they might be auto mechanics. They might
Just
work in a
the
factory.
folks were able to just intuitively understand mechanical stuff and jump in and solve problems.
Yeah.
So, solar panel installers, guys that do these big, huge solar farms that reflect back energy.
Just geniuses, Tim.
Guys
Those
like
folks.
Yeah, guys like that.
I appreciate your ego.
Thank you. I do too.
Interestingly, the designs we're chasing will also be more green. So, Matt kept me going, and we worked on the wheelchairs a few times. Wheelchairs, plural, because I quickly went from having just the one crowdfunded working wheelchair to having 4 working wheelchairs of the kind I need. I recently gave one away. We'll talk about that in a few minutes.
Yeah.
And in the process of, basically, it's my job to break wheelchairs now. I use them. I do things. Tim's seen me. I don't really stop. I will try just about anything, because if I need to get there, I'm going to try.
Yeah. Hey, can I jump in for a second?
Sure.
I have a lot of experience hanging out with Mr. Queter. We co-ran for New York State Senate in neighboring districts. And I will say, I got some things to say about your wheelchair, because when people are thinking of wheelchairs, they're thinking of this standard kind of frail kind of 2-wheeled operation that people are pushing with their hands. Your wheelchair is like a freaking tank, right? I mean, it is A, solid, B, durable, C, can go anywhere, and D, fits your personality, brother. Like, that's the reality.
And E, it's simple and repairable.
There you go. Yeah, perfect.
That's key. So I keep breaking things, and then we get together and we make them better. That's everything from the joystick to the battery system. I've even broken the frame in half. The thing still drove into the house after breaking the frame in half. This is called an Omega Track, and this is the first time I actually get to say that out loud in public, representing the organization. The reason we didn't talk about it being an Omega Track was because we wanted to harvest some of the IP associated with it. One of that would be the differential drive transmission. This is a wheelchair with a differential drive transmission. Do you know what that means?
I'm sure we totally do, but maybe explain it to our audience.
No, I totally know what it means, but if you want to explain it to me like I'm 5, Tom, that I would appreciate that.
Okay. Have you ever tried to drive something that's not very powerful at an angle up a hill, and it tries to straighten out and go straight up the hill?
Yeah.
Right.
This won't try to straighten up. This will go wherever I tell it to go.
All right.
That's very handy and convenient. Another thing you could use to illustrate it is that when you jack it up for repairs, if you hit the joystick directly to one side, you're only engaging the steer motor, not the drive motor. Both are pumping their power through that transmission. But one motor supplying power to one transmission, and the wheels go in opposite directions. That gives you a tighter turning radius.
Right, so you're able to
maneuverable.
So it's able to control a lot more. So you're not just trying to turn then move. It's
right. The advantage of the differential drive transmission is I can quite easily navigate my kitchen and make the food that I make. I know you guys follow me on Facebook. You probably see, the food porn that I put out. everything from smoked ribs to homemade liverwurst, and
Looks good.
that's necessary, right?
Yeah.
But my lifestyle is rural. Tim's seen my home. We've got 52 acres out back. I want to be able to go on that 52 acres. That's up washed out trails, through the woods, cross fields, and I can. So it's a wheelchair that can do both. We've all seen wheelchairs in commercials that can go navigating through the woods or up a trail. And we've all seen wheelchairs that can go through the home. It's very rare to find one that tries to combine both. In fact, in New York, when I went through that approval process that I spoke of a little bit ago, I discovered that the ability to get over the threshold of your door to go down the ramp and leave your home is not a justification for a better wheelchair.
So like if you can't like exit your home in like a simple manner, that the New York State's like, whatever, like this sounds like your problem.
Yeah, apparently they think house fires don't happen.
Yeah, right. You might need to leave your house quickly sometimes. That's
now the Omega Track will drive through a wall.
So question is, have you tried it yet? It's
so I have actually. I didn't actually go all the way through the wall because it was an accident, but I did break one of the 2x4 studs.
No.
All right.
And when I was in college, I may or may not have had too much to drink and knocked one of those big steel fire doors out of the block wall in the dormitory.
Yeah.
Whoops.
Can I add something like for my redneck buddies out there that operate equipment? Tom's wheelchair operates like a skid steer, right? You can kind of push in one direction and have the track go in the other direction and spin in a circle. Is that correct? Because close enough?
Close.
Gives close. A sense of what we're talking about.
So back to this being the Omega Track. Mind you, we're chasing open source designs. Mm-hmm. We're not looking to be a global manufacturer that reaps all the money and controls the market and monopolizes through the government, which is what happens. A lot of people are unaware, but the medical equipment industry actually has more power over our government than the pharmaceutical company ever did.
So, right, and so it's just all these medical equipment companies being like patenting absolutely every little component of these things, so you can't buy pieces, or even if you can buy, you have to buy it through them, and it's expensive, and probably through their repair shops and all that.
Let me ask you this: wouldn't that incentivize them to put the most profitable piece of equipment for them into the hands of people who may or may not benefit from that specific piece of equipment? Don't we have a real situation with regulatory capture that we're facing here?
Yes. So I can actually kind of go into that a little bit. Yeah. I remember I told you it's my job to break wheelchairs, and I told you I had broken the joystick. It's actually a gimbal. It's the part below the part that you move to make the chair move. It's a 1/8 inch by 2 inch piece of copper wrapped in a resistor wire that a pin runs over. And when you move the joystick, that pin moves, and that's how the chair knows what direction you're trying to go in. And there's two, side and front. And between those two axes, it knows whether or not it needs to go straight forward, straight to one side, or somewhere in between. We identified what was wrong with it. We figured it out. We figured out that joystick gimbal was no longer manufactured, not available on the market. We couldn't even find a used one to harvest a part from. And so we went straight to the company. And we didn't ask them for a new part. We didn't ask them for their designs. We actually just asked them for enough information about that joystick gimbal to find an off-the-shelf replacement part. And I got a nice little email telling me to throw my $65,000 otherwise perfectly working wheelchair away.
Right.
Of course.
Yeah. I mean, they're probably like, well, go to New York State and ask for a new one, and then I don't know what, in a year or so, maybe you'll get. I don't know how long it takes, but
between 2 months and 2 years.
Wow.
It takes between 2 months and 2 years, depending on how much customization you need. Now, here's the thing: $65,000 chair. That right there is insane to begin with.
Sure.
What kind of car would you get for $65,000 15 years ago?
A Hellcat, a Dodge Hellcat with 700 horsepower.
Right?
I mean, that's
I'm just saying I had my eye on one a few years back, and that's what you would get for about $65,000.
honestly,
Well,
it's getting pretty close to the cost of my house.
Yeah.
At that time, that's what New York State would pay on a wheelchair if you got it justified. Now they've capped it down to $19,000. The maximum that services or healthcare in New York will pay for a wheelchair, last I checked, was $19,000. Now, you were talking about that Hellcat car. Sorry, I'm not a car guy, but what if the government had capped that car at $19,000 as opposed to 65? What would the manufacturer do to that car?
Make 0 of them.
Correct. That's what happened to the Omega Track. But if they did decide to keep the line and the name and the branding going, what would they do to it?
They would change it to a piece of garbage with nothing but problems, right? Like that's what they would do. That's how it works. Guys, we talk about economics on the show all the time. That's a reality. Price controls turn things into garbage.
And now we have the situation where we're paying between $2,000 and $19,000 for a power wheelchair, and our insurance companies are only required to repair them until they're 5 years old. And I have been in the situation where instead of paying for a $100 repair, the insurance company says you got to get a new chair.
Right. Even if everything else on it's fine.
Right.
It's just.
Now, what would make that make sense to an insurance company?
The only thing I think of is like liability is they're like, oh, well, like maybe something else is a problem. So like, we don't want to deal with it and say it was repaired. That's the only thing I can guess.
There's not really a whole lot of liability because the minute you're disabled, you're worth less in the eyes of the court. Investment. Big companies invest in other big companies.
Right.
Okay.
So if you're invested in a throwaway product and you're charged with covering the cost of that product, that makes more sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, fair enough.
Long term, yeah.
Is that like a thing that actually happens?
It does seem to be that way, yes. Many equipment manufacturers are owned by parent companies, and you might think they're competing brands, and they're really not. But we're kind of getting off the subject here.
Right.
So our goal is open source designs. And we knew of some technology that wasn't being used that we wanted to use. And that's why we hadn't used the word Omega Track. The Omega Track was created by a family whose son was a quadriplegic. They also happen to be aeronautics engineers for the Air Force. It's almost like that might lend itself to good design.
Yeah.
So we've run into this situation where we want to harvest the intellectual property, the patent of the transmission. And I couldn't get an IP lawyer to talk to me because it's not a moneymaker for them or anybody. Now, what I did end up finding, though, was one Devin Hamilton. Devin Hamilton has CP. He lives in Webster, near Rochester.
Mm-hmm.
And he has a business called RapAdapt. You can actually go to rapadapt.com if you like. That's his business. He is a RIT graduate, mechanical engineering, I believe. He has already engineered and patented his own wheelchair. The wheelchair he uses in the shop is custom built for him, by him. It's pretty amazing. He even custom built a accessible CNC machine.
Huh.
What? I'm sorry. Say that again, bud.
Accessible CNC machine?
Do you know what a CNC machine does?
No.
It's kind of a programmable metal carver. I'm not a technical guy, but it's one of those machines where you can cut out a gear or cut out whatever design it is you want to make. It's pretty fancy, and they're usually pretty expensive.
Oh, yeah. No, my ears weren't working. You said a programmable CNC machine, like a CNC lathe?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. All right. I got you. That you can cut any shape metal with it. Like it's wild. They're literally wild machines. So you can custom make all sorts of stuff with them.
it is actually an amazing machine. Now, he has a regular CNC machine because he has a business and partners, but he also has one specifically for him that he designed. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
A friend of a friend sent me a link to his business, and I was interested. And I gave him a call, and I asked him if he knew anything about the Omega Track. And he says, "Yeah, I've got two. I'm trying to repair." Apparently, he had an Omega Track, and he also loves the Omega Track. And if you run into anybody who's ever had one, they want one again.
All right.
Because it gives you a certain level of freedom and confidence and ability, and a lack of dependence on everyone around you who's in today's world likely also struggling. So we got talking, and he has an IP team. And we held a meeting with his IP team, and they helped me decipher that particular patent is in the public domain. Do you know what that means?
So means free game for you to make, right?
Yes. And nobody can harvest it and make sure we can't make it either.
Yeah.
Originally, we were going to harvest it to release it open source, but now it'll never be open source unless someone actually reverse engineers it and recreates the design with a manual on how to manufacture it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's what Devin's doing.
That's what he's doing. Oh, that's cool. So doing that, anyone will be able to find ways to be able to produce these parts, which means that small repair for your very expensive machine will be able to be fixed inexpensively. Yes. That's great.
Potentially even voluntarily.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think in the next segment, Tom, we're going to go into a couple things that I find important about you. Kevin, how are we doing on time? I know that
we have about 30 seconds. So
right.
that's actually that's pretty good. So we do need to wrap up this segment here. Thanks again for joining us here on A Free Solution. Again, we're joined by Thomas Daniel Queter, and we're talking about a bunch of stuff, IP law. We're talking about mobility and the work that Mr. Queter is doing. So we're going to be back here on A Free Solution in just a few minutes. Talk to you soon.
I got a couple little Queter anecdotes that to lead off the next segment, like put you right on the spot, make you feel uncomfortable, Tom. You know what I mean? I'm just going to kind of hammer them out there. And I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to tell everybody why you are specifically interesting to what I would call the libertarian movement, this voluntarism society. And you were touching on it right before, you know what I mean? Like this issue of why you hate the government almost as much as I do, or perhaps more. You know what I mean? Like,
well, I mean, did the government ever lose your legs, Tim?
The government, the government hasn't lost my legs yet, but I could see them doing it. You know what I mean? So we're gonna kind of brush on that stuff. I got to run to the fridge. I'll be right back, fellas.
I do need to make sure that I plug Liberty Memes and the fundraiser we're doing for Devin.
Oh yeah. All right, so we'll make sure we get to that before the end. So that's right. You wanted to share. I'm going to make sure I share the website for the Mobility Independence Foundation, and I'm going to make sure I share the link to the Liberty Memes fundraiser too.
Thank you.
I'll have it.
The Mobility Independence Foundation, themif.org. We're miffed.
Miffed. It's fun. LibertyMemesFoundation.org.
The conversations when we're working on designs or concepts together get pretty amazing because we get very critical of the technology we're looking at.
All right. Well, gentlemen, ready to go back in a few seconds. We'll go back at 24:30.
I promise it's not soup, it's coffee.
Okay, whatever you want it to be.
Welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson here today, joined by Tim the Freedom Baron O'Connor and Thomas Daniel Queter, talking about the Mobility Independence Foundation and just a policy around that stuff too. But Tim, you wanted to jump in with a few things here.
Yeah, no. So look, like I said, I got to spend a reasonable amount of time with Tom back in the day when we were both in the middle of the COVID lockdowns, and we had this unique opportunity that a guy like Larry Sharp did some work for, where we had ballot access, and we thought maybe we were going to change the world, and we were both running as libertarians, and so look, guys, Thomas Daniel Queter has spent his life in a wheelchair. He's an incredibly brave soul, and I have anecdotes about that, but that's not what this piece is going to be about, all right? This guy, I'm going to ask him to comment on, I think you hate the government almost as much as I do, maybe even more. And I think that the people that are listening, the people that are going to check this out on Spotify, and the people that are checking it out on Twitter right now would love to hear more about your disdain for the systems that just seem to fail when it comes, like they have opportunities to help people out that are in trying situations like yourself, and they have opportunities to help them out, and always they seem to come up short. So do you mind going down that road with us?
Well, I want to remind you that with an anecdote, because we were talking about Devin Hamilton. The board of the Mobility Independence Foundation had a road trip a few weeks ago, and we went to Devin's shop. Rapidapt.com is his business. And afterwards, we had a barbecue at Jim Dayton's house. You know Jim. And I had invited a couple of Rochester Institute of Technology students because they wanted to meet Devin, also with disabilities. And there was this point where we're all four of us sitting around joking about how we have to prove we're disabled. In my case, it's usually about 16 times a year that the government spends money to make sure that my genetic disorder that I was born with that can't go into remission still exists.
Oh, God. Oh,
Got to be sure. Maybe something changed. You know?
I mean, they spent like 6 months at one point a couple of years ago making sure that it affected me between the ages of 18 and 21. I don't know if they thought that Jesus came down and laid hands on me and I was cured for a few years, but then he changed his mind. You know, I don't know. But when you think about it, right, we have these massive bureaucratic systems that cost a lot of money, and we have all these legislators, and they want to determine whether or not you're disabled or have this health issue or that health issue. And, you know, in reality, you and your doctor should be doing that.
Be simple, right?
That makes sense.
The government does some weird things when we go down this road, right? It's like a make work program for people that they've hired, who some of them are really good and mean really well, but some of them are simply incompetent box checkers who are there for a paycheck. And our friend Shelly in the chat was bringing up this notion that now there's this hiring freeze, and we're stuck in this situation because the government forces us to stay stuck. But a guy like you is taking that on. You're taking that bull on by the horns. You're just grabbing a hold of it and challenging.
In terms of social workers, in my experience, most of them get into it for the right reason. They want to help people.
Yeah.
And then what happens is they've been on the job for a couple of years and they suddenly realize I'm not really allowed to help people.
Right.
I was a social worker. I was a CPS worker. I'm like, I'm not helping anyone. This is insane. It was brutal.
And that's how you end up with people who are there for the paycheck, right? Because everybody has bills and kids and, you know, their dog to feed or whoever and whatever. But we all have responsibilities, and you have a job. It's kind of hard to leave it, especially with state benefits.
Sure.
So
it's those
social workers actually near and dear to my heart. They have one of the highest rollover rates, again, because of the nature of the job. They have one of the highest psychosis and suicide rates because, again, the nature of the job, right? And what is the nature of the job of a social worker? They come and they get to know you. They befriend you. They understand what you need. They go file the paperwork, and they also have to come back and say, sorry, I know you're in need. I know you're suffering. I know you're in a lot of pain, but we're not allowed to help you.
It's amazing, dude. It's amazing. I went through it as a CPS worker. It broke my brain for a little while, right? Like, luckily I had options, and I was like a guy that just has had too much energy back then. I would work my social work job, I would bartend, I would take side jobs painting houses. It was crazy. I was crazy. But this is a painful reality, right? Like they feel like they are helping, they realize they're not. Then what are they supposed to do? What are they supposed to do?
Probably the same thing we all end up in the situation of doing. Whatever brings home the paycheck and puts food on the table.
Yeah.
And it's disheartening and it's sad because I mean these are some of the best people in the world who get into it to do the right thing, and here we are wasting them too.
Yeah. My daughter wants to go into social work. I'm concerned for her, Tom, to be honest with you. She's gonna, and of course, my jaded perspective, I've offered her lots of takes on, are you sure, honey? Is that really what you want to do? But and hopefully she can make a difference in her life and in numerous people's lives. I'm sure that's the goal, right?
So I actually have a loose statewide network of social workers who contact me when they really want to help someone and can't.
Oh,
And,
awesome.
and
Tell
they
us
want
more
to know,
about that.
what kind of concept or idea, what can I propose to this person as a whisper so I don't lose my job? And, I converse with them and, I make sure they know that they're taking risks if they're going to do something like that, because I found out through one of my own social workers that often they're required to not compete with Medicare or Medicaid. So if you need, and this is an incident that actually happened, she's no longer a social worker anymore. She quit over everything we're talking about.
The monopoly.
She was trying to help an elderly gentleman who was in hospice get a new hospital bed because when he had broke, and it was denied pre-COVID, and of course it was denied during COVID, and the supply chain was screwed up, and there was like no hope of getting this 80-something-year-old guy who's in a lot of pain a place to sleep comfortably as he dies. And she went out and above and beyond and found 4 brand new sealed and packaged hospital beds that could be donated, his pick. And the company she worked for actually told her that she couldn't. She wasn't allowed to.
Right.
Did they give a reason? Like, why would that be
The
a
reason
thing? Why would that be a thing, Tom?
Well, I mean, when you sign, the paperwork for having a job, right? It turns out in the paperwork, in her case, she's not allowed to compete with Medicare or Medicaid.
Oh my God. It's a monopoly on insurance, and it's a ridiculous situation where volunteerism is actually interfered with by well-intentioned government regulations. Is that a fair summary?
Yeah, it's fair to say though that at least the narrative around them is that they're well-intentioned. But if you know anything about lobbying,
fair enough.
You know better.
Oh, sure. Well, like from like an average like voter point of view, like when we're asking our politicians to create policy, like this all seems like well-intentioned. Like, hey, we're just trying to help people, right? Like, and then once you get into the weeds of what actually happens with stuff like this, where like, oh well, they have to go through this Medicaid system, so we can't like give this person a bed so that he can be comfortable in his final, like how on earth do you divorce humanity so much from this situation and give into like bureaucratic nonsense that's like we end up here, right? Starts out well-intentioned, you end up in bureaucratic nonsense.
The number one thing that tends to make people realize that there's something wrong with the bureaucratic system is when you point out that we are paying social workers to sit on hold with people at Medicaid that we pay to put people on hold.
Say that again. I think that needs to be emphasized.
We are paying social workers and other government workers to sit on hold with people at Medicaid that we pay to put people on hold.
The circular logic of government, bro. Like, yes.
No expert, but it feels like there might be a better way to do this. I don't know. At least that part
feels like it. Like it's not that obvious, right? Like, holy cow, man.
We've hit on volunteerism a couple of times. My wheelchair was crowdfunded in 2019. That kind of set me on my path that I'm on today. And we need to talk about libertymemes.org. friend of mine, David Gang. I wish I had thought to bring him on today. I probably should have. That's my mistake. Apologies, David, but I'm about to give you a lot of credit, so take it. He is an amazing guy. Before he was a nonprofit foundation, I believe he had raised somewhere around $6 million for individual causes.
Get out of here. Get
Yeah.
out of here. LibertyMemes.org raised over $6 million
Before they were a nonprofit organization.
Oh
They did
my
that with
God.
memes on Facebook.
I post memes. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
But I know I've seen it. Like if you follow the Liberty Memes page, they still got the memes, and then they're also like, funding bands, and things like that. They're doing cool stuff, and they've been doing a bunch of causes too. But I think that's been their big focus recently is mostly the van crowdfunding.
Well, when I ended up in a situation of needing a van, I happened to be in an event in Syracuse. I think Tim was there.
Yep.
And so was David. And a friend of mine, Spike Cohen, took me over and said, meet David.
Spike's great, man. He's great. He came out big for you. We should talk about your race in the next segment a little bit, but please, I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
Well, I'm Caucasian, so.
Yeah. Well, okay. All right. I get you. Go ahead.
So Liberty
Well
Memes
played.
Foundation,
Well played.
before they were a foundation, actually crowdfunded my accessible van in 24 hours. 23, actually, if you don't count the overage that ended up going into new brakes.
I remember that. That was
Yeah.
wild. I drove one of your wheelchair vans, dude, and it was pretty awesome. Like the setup was perfect for you.
As a passenger.
Yeah, it was, and look, it left you in charge of your destiny, which I thought was pretty awesome. The hardest part, I think, was finding drivers all the time when you need them, but that setup was ideal. But like, that's not government issued. You kind of designed that. You kind of came up with the program, correct? That what you needed, and Liberty Memes kind of just aided, right? Is that fair?
Well, I was already familiar with what I needed in an accessible van because I've been doing this a while.
Sure. Yeah, imagine.
And I also understand the market when it comes to accessible vans. Camper vans that have been redone into accessible vans by adding a lift. Well, there's two things about that. They're no longer set up for camping. And
Right.
they're a big van, and people with disabilities have budgets, and they're kind of gas guzzlers. I mean, we still get 15 to 18 mpg, which is horrible, but it's also not ideal.
I'm a big fan of gas guzzling vehicles, man. When they're serving a human being, making the world better, like I'm not sure we'll be able to do it with electric, right? Like electric may not be able to carry that weight that far. I don't know.
It's coming, Tim. It's coming.
I hope. All right. I know there's like this big volcano that opened up these monster lithium deposits, but I digress. This show is about you, right? Like, let's do that.
So with that van, I have been to Lake Tahoe and back.
Nice.
I have been to Florida and back 3 times. I've been all over New York State and Pennsylvania. And that's what's facilitated my ability to found the Mobility Independence Foundation. And to do things like partner with Liberty Memes to help Devin Hamilton get an accessible van. His is not accessible. When we went out there and met him, his friend had a pickup truck with a wooden pallet strapped down to the bed and a wheelchair lift on the pallet. And they would lift Devin into the passenger seat and then load the wheelchair on the back of the pickup truck. And in my discussions with Devin, I know that he has actually been injured in that process, right? Being lifted and put somewhere by someone else. I don't care if you're able-bodied or not. That's not a comfortable situation, and it's not ideal to prevent injury. I'm pretty sure that someone has probably dropped Tim along the way throughout his life.
On my head. That's my mom brags about it. She's like,
Right.
this is why you are the way you are. And she's like, she says she's sorry. I feel pretty comfortable where I'm at, so I don't know. I don't know.
All right, but unfortunately, I have to cut you off now. We have to head to our second break. We got one more segment. Thanks again for joining us here on A Free Solution on WYSL. We're going to be back in just a few minutes. Talk to you soon. All right.
It's all the political training. I can talk forever.
James Dayton out there.
Jimmy.
Dayton. So,
Thanks
and he
for joining
says,
us.
three awesome hooligans right here. If you're listening on the podcast and you can't see what we posted, and I want to get to this comment too from Sam. He said, when my dad had cancer, it was tough to find him a hospital bed and wheelchair. He had a month to live, and they were telling us 3 to 5 months to get a bed. Monopoly Search Service. Yeah,
They do. And look, taxation, Tom. We did a great couple shows about taxation and how the high levels of taxation actually interfere with voluntarism and everything from sales tax to property tax. It impacts my ability to help a guy like you. But when we go back to the show, I have an offer and a pledge that I'm gonna make to you. Pick either Liberty Memes or your open source kind of deal. And we'll go from there. It's not going to be huge. Don't get too excited, but it's something. It's something.
Everything counts, Tim. Everything counts. And in both cases, if you itemize, they're tax deductible.
Are they really? Well, let me take another look at my bank balance. No, I'm just kidding. I already have the amount set.
All right. No, but we are both 501c3s, and so anybody that donates goods or cash can write that off their income taxes.
That's fantastic. We should mention that on the actual official radio show, I guess, right?
Yeah, we'll mention it on a radio show. But before we do the radio show, I'll make sure that you have the opportunity to say the website and promote the Liberty Memes Foundation website too. So both of those, I've shared the links to those. If you're listening online or just jumping in or just in the podcast, I've shared the link to those in the comments. But LibertyMemesFoundation.org and the MIF. The MIF.org for the Mobility Independence Foundation. And again, we'll share those on the radio too. But podcast audience, if you want to get to those, check them out. All right, let's go back in just a few seconds, folks, and do the last radio segment of the show. And if we want to keep going, we can too. But the radio segment, gotta do that.
I'm good till 3, so you got me as long as you want me.
All right.
We'll go back in 5, 4, 3. Welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, your host for today, joined by Tim the Freedom Variant O'Connor and Thomas Daniel Queter. And where were we? What were we talking about? we of course, if you're listening to the radio show, we went to break. We talked for a minute there, but so if you're listening on WYSL, make sure you catch the podcast. We're probably going to talk a bit afterwards too. But I think we were talking about Liberty Memes Foundation. We were talking about some of the wheelchair van stuff that they were doing, including doing a van for the guy at Rapidapt, Devin?
Yeah.
Devin Hamilton, right?
Devin Ham.
Originally from your county, Tim.
The name sounded so familiar. I feel like I probably met him at one point or another, and I'm looking forward to reconnecting or officially meeting him in the future. I think that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and WYSL listeners, again, he's based up in Webster, so he's right around us up here. So
we were talking about mobility and the Mobility Independence Foundation and Liberty Memes Foundation.org. We're both in the business of providing mobility to those with disabilities.
Yes.
Ours is accessible equipment like wheelchairs. We're working, one of the RIT students I mentioned earlier already has their own open source power assist for manual chair.
Nice. Tom, I got an anecdote for you, and you tell me what you think. All right. There was a guy near me that experienced this disability. For him, it was relatively temporary, but what he did was he was stuck in a wheelchair for a few months, and he took one of those electric bikes and kind of attached it to the back of it. And so this dude was zipping up and down the road going about 30 miles an hour. Little bit terrifying for me, but what do you think? Like he was kind of a genius there. And is that the kind of thing you and Devin are working on?
That's actually the kind of thing that our IT student is working on.
Oh wow! All right.
They're working with an e-bike company to do this. They help them with their testing. They help them with their design. They help them with their instead of having to troubleshoot problems, but knowing the problems that are going to come. Now, the interesting thing about the Mobility Independence Foundation, the MIF.org, 1F, and the Liberty Memes Foundation.org is, like I said, we're both in the business of providing better mobility to people in need. The Liberty Memes Foundation, I believe I was like the third or fourth accessible band that they crowdfunded, and now they've done dozens. And there's a list of there's always a constant list of 20 or 40 people waiting to be the next fundraiser promoted, right?
Right.
And we typically have a few on the website at a time, but through our social media channels, we try to focus on one at a time, get it done, move on, get it done, move on. We are the kind of people who like to get the job done. So, to that point, what Devin does is consult individualized solutions for those with disabilities. That could be a wheelchair repair. That could be a home modification. It goes to where they live with them, talks to them, sees the problem, and works it out. He needs a vehicle.
Devin needs a vehicle.
And if you go to libertymemes.org and you scroll down, you will see a fundraiser. I personally put in the first $10. If I had more money, I'd have funded the whole thing. But this is a situation, I hate to compare it to like myself, but I guess that's what other people would do. I'm going to ask you, Tim. I'm going to ask you.
Yeah.
If you had $10 to donate, and you had the choice of donating to someone in need or someone in need who's going to go on to help other people, which one would you choose?
Well, all right. So this actually is going to, that was a great segue, because here's the reality. I have $100 today that I plan on donating. And what I'm going to ask for from the crowd is kind of like a matching thing. Like, you guys make a donation. I'm giving a total of $100 today. I'll match the next whatever up to 100 today. But the onus is on you to tell me which way to go. But do it. Like, what do you say? Is Devin? I feel as though Devin perhaps is both.
In my opinion, Devin's the one that needs the money right now. The Mobility Independence Foundation has been very fortunate. We got to slash our budget through volunteerism. We got a guy with 30 years experience in electronics designing our motor controller. We have a guy with a robotics degree who self-contracts doing our HID, which is you might call it a joystick in a wheelchair. Right. We've got Devin doing the transmission, and we're going to utilize his business going forward. Our resources have not had to be money nearly as much as we thought. It's amazing how much. I'm gonna quote James Beck. He's the guy in Georgia. We are a remote company, by the way. All of this is coordinated remotely. That's mostly my job. He's co-owner of a business that's pretty big in their sector. It's actually called Really Killer Systems. They focus on video game equipment, but he likes to make things that work. And that's exactly what he said. He told me, I've got this company, I've got this job, I enjoy what I do, but I really just want to make things that work.
Yeah. I understand that. That's a part of like that speaks to me at my core. I like to make things work. One of the other things I like to do is refurbish or buy older equipment and make that work. And I feel as though there's some sort of symbiosis here where we're kind of in the same brain set, like where you have a wheelchair that they're not making anymore, but if we can keep them on the road for guys like you, it's a huge advantage. It's huge because, like you said earlier, $65,000 your wheelchair would cost, but that was 7 years ago. Is that correct?
That was like 15 to 20 years ago, and that was through the systems, which piles on extra cost, and there's even more costs you don't see. But actually, Tim, that's an excellent point, because what we're going for is the original concept of the Omega Track was longevity. Remember I told you After 3
Right.
to 5 years, most wheelchairs are done. Right? Insurance companies won't even pay for repairs after 5 years.
Right.
This chair is a lot like a cast iron pan. It can be refurbished over and over and over and over again. And I
Bake
want
it
to
a
ask
little
you,
bit, and it's good to go. Just
I want to
rub a
ask you,
little oil on it, maybe sand it, bake it. You're running it for another couple years. I love it.
if you needed a wheelchair, would you want one that you knew was going to go in the garbage in 5 years, or one that you thought is possible for your grandchild to use after a car accident in his 30s?
Well, so look, if I was to pick a wheelchair, I'd pick a wheelchair like a skid steer that has a solid base that is going to be able to push mountains of dirt and help me clean snow. So I want your wheelchair, bro. I've seen it. It's real. You know what I mean? That's what I want.
And that sounds very rural and rugged. The interesting thing is it's also very good at navigating the sidewalks of Queens, which are
Nice.
terrible.
Oh, you've had experience, right? When you were out like collecting signatures in Queens. Yes, yes.
3
I
weeks
still can do
down
both.
Yeah.
I spent 3 weeks down there, and I saw a total of 2 power wheelchairs out and about, and I was out and about the whole time. And they struggled.
Can I jump in? If you saw 2 other power wheelchairs, could your wheelchair have driven them right into the ground, like turned them into mincemeat?
See, not you just want me to talk about the wheelchair demolition derby I had years ago, don't you?
Smooth segue, Tim.
I know. I'm pretty good at that. That's great.
So, yeah, actually, it's got 1.5 horsepower. It has a 1 horsepower drive motor, a 0.5 horsepower steer motor, technical posi traction, I believe, and it'll climb a 6-inch curb, up or down. The frame actuates so that if you're on uneven ground, all 4 of your wheels are touching the ground.
Wow.
That's wild. That's wild.
That's great. I mean, and then yeah, the curb thing too. So like, I know like curb cuts can be a challenge in some cities, right? So you're able to navigate those if they're not well maintained or present.
Which is about the same as the sidewalks of Queens.
Yeah.
I mean, I went over sidewalks I wouldn't recommend you walk across.
Right. I haven't been to Queens, so I don't know the conditions over at the sidewalks there, but pretty rough.
Like every densely populated urban area, most of the stuff's falling apart. There's too many people, and it smells bad. Be honest.
Hey, listen, Rochester has some nice parts. New York City, they are starting to not put garbage out on the street anymore. They're going to put in cans like a modern society.
Like a civilized race. I mean, it's beautiful. Civilized human beings. Excuse me.
You know, it's actually the homeless people that care about that more than anybody else. When I was down there, I ended up in Manhattan for one of Larry Sharp's events. And, you know, there were a couple of shops and there were a couple of guys, you know, they were panhandling. But the one guy would chastise politely anybody who littered.
Nice.
Right? Yeah. Meanwhile, there's this just giant, massive pile of garbage sitting there, right? But his point was to make sure it got to the pile instead of in the middle.
That makes sense.
It's something. It's something. There's a glimmer of civilization in New York City. Great.
So, you know, I personally have taken on this fundraiser for Devin through Liberty Memes as a volunteer. Devin is extremely motivated individual with a brain that blows me out of the water every time I talk to him. He has some true potential, some true talent, and he needs a vehicle so that he can keep helping others utilize his talent and live a good life. I'm sure he's not the kind of person to complain. He offered us barbecue. I don't know if you understand that, but if you feed people, that's hospitality. You're not complaining when you're being hospitable. You're being generous. Mm-hmm. The other thing I would say about Liberty Memes is that we do have a general fund listed on the front of the organization. If you just go to libertymemesfoundation.org, if you want to make a recurring small donation, that's the place to do it. That's how we start out fundraisers. That's how we top them off at the end. That's how we pay to fly David or whoever to wherever the vehicle is to check it out, purchase it, and bring it back to wherever the person in need lives. So, yes, we do everything. We find them, we purchase them, we do the paperwork, and we do the transfer, and it's theirs. And when I say we, I mean David.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
David is a very passionate person, and he really cares about helping people.
Yeah. No, for sure.
That's great. You're look, let's not sell you short. You
Well, I am
are
sure.
one of the most passionate, bravest individuals that I've ever met. All right, sure, we can prop up Devin, but also Queeter, you deserve a lot of respect and a lot of participation in your ideas. You are relentless, brother. You're relentless.
Yeah, man.
Well,
Put in the work. It's awesome to see.
I like value in terms of value, not in terms of dollars. So money's never really mattered to me. I can produce value. I can butcher and grow food. I can repair things. I can figure things out. I can help people. I can do this and I can do that.
Yeah.
And the law of attraction applies. What you put out into the world, you get back. And as much as I would love to have Tim O'Connor's $1 million, if he gave me $1 million, I would just put it right into the Mobility Independence Foundation, which is primarily funded by its board members, by the way. We're not making money, we're spending money to help people.
Sure.
Or individual causes through Liberty Memes. Those things.
Can we shake down the government for some of your causes, Queeter? What's the goal here? Can we just be like, you know what you guys should do? Give this guy money.
But once we, it's interesting because I just looked into some tech grants that came out of the Fed recently. They will not give money to a nonprofit. You have to be a for-profit business. And so going forward, the discussion has been had that, well, maybe we should form a sister corporation that is for-profit and harvest some of those war dollars and put them into giving people wheelchairs.
That's what a lot of companies do. They have a nonprofit arm and they have a for-profit arm. They do their thing. But we have about a minute left, so I wanted to make sure that you had a chance to wrap things up, remind people where they can look out for the Mobility Independence Foundation. And I did put up the link, but we'll say it out loud too of libertymemesfoundation.org. If you're watching online, you can see the link to Devin's van. But
if you just go to their webpage and you scroll down, that's libertymemesfoundation.org. You scroll down a little ways, you will find Devin's fundraiser. That's the most important thing to me today. But in the long term, the Mobility Independence Foundation is the most important thing to me. I do have a book coming out probably early next year. It's sort of a memoir in terms of mobility equipment and what's happened to me and my family since I was 4 years old, with specific regard to wheelchairs.
Fantastic. Is it a money laundering operation by the Democratic or Republican Party, your book?
No, it's actually, it's going to be released by the foundation, and any purchase of a copy or ebook copy will benefit the foundation, not me personally.
All right. Seriously, that's beautiful, brother. I think that's great. So get ready to buy Tom's book. Get ready to match my $100. Let's do this.
And unlike Andrew Cuomo, my book was written after the fact, not before.
Did you use interns?
I did have a writing assistant, and I have
awesome. That's great.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with working as a team. All right, guys. I gotta cut you off. We're running out of time for the show. Thanks again for joining us here on WYSL. If you want to listen to stuff we talk about after, go find the podcast. We might keep talking. All right, thanks again for joining us on Free Solution. Have a great night, folks. Take care. All right. Yeah. So, sorry to cut you guys off. Radio time's pretty strict.
No, that was Kevin. Thank you. It kind of lends a little air of seriousness and a little air of reality to what we're trying to do, and I think it's great. So that's
speaking of seriousness, I'm gonna grab my tobacco real quick. I'll be right back.
Yeah, I'm gonna have one more beer. What do you say? Let's keep it. Kevin, do you mind if we keep this going? Your kids
no, we keep going. You're fine. So my son is actually asleep now. So
perfect. Perfect.
So we keep going. I mean, for the folks listening online, these guys are going to be back, but I'm going to make sure we put up that information again too. The myth, the MIF.org, checking that stuff out, and real excited to see what produce. And so I'm curious because I've seen your post about this. You're growing tobacco right now.
Yeah,
I seen you're drying out the leaves and everything. How's it going?
It's my first time. It's kind of experimental. I planted a small fraction of the seeds that I got for $3. And they're doing as expected. The leaves are drying in the wood room where our wood furnace is. And there's one plant left out there that has flowers on top, and I've got that in a bag because I want to harvest seed and compare that generation seed to the original seed next year. So I still have some that I purchased and any that I get from this, and I'll try to germinate both. And, comparative analysis in gardening, something I've done since I was a kid with lots of different plants, including cannabis.
Yeah, there you go.
So, it's very interesting what you get to do as a nonprofit as opposed to as a candidate or an activist. As a nonprofit, you bring yourself this weird and false air of trust, right? Because you have that 501c3, the government has stamped you as trustworthy, right? You can see the red.
That's my goal in life, Tom, is to get stamped as trustworthy by the government. That would be awesome.
It is. You're right. It's something that people like. They assume like, oh, like this is a nonprofit. It must be charitable. Must be helpful. All it is a type of corporate structure. That's all it is.
Yeah.
Right. That has some tax advantages. Like that's. It can be good
about that. Like just because it's not like a nonprofit doesn't mean that like the leaders aren't making massive amounts of money coming up with disgusting ideas to forward an agenda. It doesn't like anyway.
So I've been
talk about yours.
I've been networking in the nonprofit world for a while now, and I can tell you that quite a lot of them are dirty.
Right.
You have to find the people you trust, not the organization you trust. I mean, Warriors is a good example where they drove out the founder because he didn't want everybody getting rich off of a cause.
Sure. But look, if someone deserves to get rich for the hard work that they've put in, or if someone deserves to make money, all right, like make a good living, a guy like you who's been dedicated to volunteerism, crafting new ideas, and confronting the rigorous monopoly that the government has, I'm okay with that. You know what I mean? Like,
no, I'd agree too. It's more when, like, if you're providing value, great. If you are just farming grants from the government, that's when I get upset, or even like donations from individuals too, and you're enriching yourself without providing that value back to the cause you're supposed to be serving. Yeah, that's the problem.
So to that note, I do have a long-term plan for myself to transition into executive director and drop off the board. At that point, though, I am a worker. I don't have any say, control, or leadership value angles there. So I will stay on the board as long as they'll have me, because that is one thing about a nonprofit. Much like a political party, the minute the board is formed, you don't own it. The board owns it. And so when you're going to start something like that, it's important to have people you trust be with you on the board, at least at first. And your bylaws are important. Because that can help keep things from going awry. However, there are a lot of nonprofits out there that do wonderful things. And there are a lot of non-organized structures out there that do a lot of wonderful things. Being able to trust the fundraiser at your firehouse for the sick kid down the street, that's something we need more of. It shouldn't have to be government stamped to be legitimate, right?
Right. The monopoly on approval by the government is a problem. It's definitely created a lack of positive solutions. Queter, I want to test your libertarian creds here. Like, I think that
I don't know if you remember, Tim, but I'm the only real libertarian.
We found him, Tim. He's the real one.
He honestly,
I've heard legends.
Kevin, you and I get so pragmatic at sometimes we're like, well, the government kind of should, but Queter's kind of like he's as again, we joked earlier, but he hates the government as much as we do, for sure. And look, your answer, I don't think your answer has to be perfect on this, but my question would be, we've got a lot of current events kicking around in the world. What's your take on Joe Biden?
He's a puppet.
He's a puppet.
I mean, come on. Look, no matter what he was in the past and whether or not you can like him for it or not, What he is right now is an old man, a very old man. This elder abuse. I'm sorry, you don't get to that level of age and that level of power without being controlled because, well, when we get old, we wear out. And
I reject that assertion, son. Are you kidding me? Look at this guy. Look at this guy. No, but yeah,
my question to you would be: when was the last president we had that was not a puppet king?
Donald J. Trump, son. Like, come on, man. That guy was real.
He certainly does what he wants.
I don't know. Like,
I like people try to get like I don't think the outcomes are good, but people I think people try to control him, and then he just did whatever he wanted to. Hey, can you say this? It's really important that you say this stuff, and you're just like go totally off script every single time. That's what made him kind of exciting and terrifying and funny all at the same time. But
right. So what's pulling Trump's strings is his ego.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I thought I had this thought this week when I get working and I'm doing little things with my hands, my brain runs overtime. I part of me feels like Donald Trump's just a total puppet for the deep state, because every time he went off script, the deep state got more power. Like the oh my God, I can't find the word. But anyways, he'd say something, they'd double down and grow their power and just make him look bad.
So
it's the weirdest thing. He's like saying things that people want to hear, and the government would seize power on what he said, and everybody would be like, well, 49% or something would be like, oh my God, you're right. He is a menace. And so I think is he part of the show?
Well, I think the answer to that would be another question. Who was the last president to pass a gun regulation that the Supreme Court found to be unconstitutional?
Donald J. Trump, perhaps. That's right. Pretty fair. Good. So, guys, all right. So, this was something you and I kind of almost lost our access to Facebook over, but I'm going to ask the question. We're looking at a disaster in Israel, an evil event that was, I got to be honest, empowered by gun control. What's your take on that? Am I right?
I think it's more empowered by the concept of proxy wars and advantaging certain economies over others through them.
All right. I'll respect that analysis, but I want to point out, and I do often and regular, that the Israeli government is has some of the strictest gun control policies in what I would call the civilized world. They're on par with England. All of their guns are locked up in some sort of neighborhood militia unit. They can't use them. They don't have access to them. And we saw a religious theocracy wage violence against neighborhoods. So that's where I'm at with that. What do you think? Am I I know that I can be crazy, but what do you think, Queeter?
Your point is valid, but I would argue that if you go back throughout the history of these wars, and those two entities in particular, Palestine and Israel, we've funded them all.
Ooh, that's a libertarian take, bro. I love it.
We have to fund, right? We have to fund the new terrorist organization to take out the last terrorist organization that we funded, because they were going to take out the terrorist organization before that we funded. And you see, if you go forward in time, it just keeps going. And then we still have war manufacturing and economies to control and resources to reap.
Yeah, that was beautiful, man. That was really nice. How does your soul feel when Mitch McConnell says, or some CNN pundit says, you know what's really good for the economy? The fact that we're making bombs right here in America and giving them to Israel and the Ukraine.
You know, you know about Amphenol, right? They make
I do.
Yeah, they make parts for American bombs. And you know, they're workers in the past.
Well, they're very green manufacturing these bombs. They're the greenest bombs ever made. Ever.
Yeah. So green that people who work there have been exposed to neurotoxins. So green that their old facility is now a solar field because you can't put anything else there.
Yeah, well, I can't wait to go down there and fix all the stuff that they did wrong because that's what I do. But whatever. Solar's good. I like it.
It's okay to like solar, and it's okay to utilize broken land, let's call it,
Right.
in a positive
Right.
manner.
We've done that a couple times, and I feel as though if there's a really good application for solar, that's one of them. We have waste, brownfields, we
Brownfield
have
stuff. Yeah.
garbage dumps, and putting solar over that is actually a fantastic idea.
They turned a garbage dump up here into a park.
Which is we joked about that, but that's not that bad of an idea as long as they control the
There's a nice park out in like Penfield area. It's all New York City's garbage.
I graduated from a school that was built on top of a cesspool.
Say that again, Tom. I'm sorry.
Gilbert Philmont Upton Central School District. That building was built on top of a cesspool.
A big cesspool, like a town-wide. Okay, all right, nice.
Hopefully they cleaned it up a bit before letting kids play out in the dirt.
I'm just thankful I didn't play in the playground.
Right? Yeah.
So
I'm saying
so there is something to be said to repurposing land that's been damaged by our activities, but there's also something to be said about not damaging more land. Because once it's damaged, you limit its utilization.
I agree with that, but one of the things I like to point out when that point is brought up by the enviro-Nazis, which I know you're not one.
I am an environmentalist. I have eaten food from the land all of my life.
Yes, as am I, right? Like there's a lot of value in having green spaces, and my thoughts here, and I'm starting to lose my train of thought.
Green spaces, they exist.
Yeah,
we're cutting down thousands of acres of trees for transmission lines for windmills that have a 15-year lifespan and are subsidized by the government. And if you know anything about subsidized projects, they rarely bring back to the community what's promised. It's almost always a net negative in the end.
We subsidize everything, though, from natural gas to oil to windmills. And sometimes I think we get into this confusing conversation, like, are they really subsidies or are they just taxes we're not taking from these companies? What do you think about that?
Well, you know how I feel about taxes.
I know, man. I'm hoping to get that fire, but we've had some fire comments from you for sure, brother. Like, right. It's just I'm always farming for another fire comment.
Okay, so my take on subsidies would be similar to some of the right's take on welfare, right? How dare you take our money and give it to these other people? Well, that's what a subsidy does. They take your money and they give it to other people, usually big corporations. Welfare at least attempts to give it to people in need, sort of.
Sure.
But subsidies really, again, if it's a constant net negative, you're just begging to lose money. You're begging to lose value.
Yeah, the broken windows fallacy. We didn't really. I saw a couple opportunities to talk about the broken windows fallacy during our show, but the broken windows fallacy is like, all right, so we're going to break this. We're going to throw it into the ocean, and that's good for the economy. And that's the argument for bombs. That's the argument for subsidies. That's this recurring distillate of what the government.
I was waiting for you to bring up cash for clunkers again.
What's that?
I was waiting for you to bring up cash for clunkers. You bring it up like once a month, and you're like,
it's my turn.
Once a month, I got to up my game because cash for clunkers was one of the worst things ever. And I'm a guy that loves, like you, Queeter. I love old equipment. I'll put parts on it all day long. I'll combine two vehicles. Like I'll buy a junker and throw like all the great parts off the junker onto the car I'm driving. Like cash for clunkers did more to destroy this economy than. In my perspective, right, from where I come from, and everybody has a story like cash for clunkers, but it was just horrible. Throw away accumulated wealth because the government thinks that's good for the economy. It's nonsense. So
we're talking about a few things here. We've talked about war. We've talked about the war economy. We've talked about subsidies for green tech. And what's the number one polluter in the world? The U.S. military.
Don't you dare say Raytheon. They are on Twitter telling us just how fucking green they are. They say it practically every day. They are the greenest bomb maker in the world. And yeah, our incredible 36% of our economy is a massive polluter dedicated to violence. And I'm a violent, like, all right, I've joked about this, but I have a propensity towards violence. I get it. We want to protect our friends. We want to protect our other people we care about. But what we're doing on a global scale to prop up the value of our dollar, to prop up our hegemony, our empire building nonsense is terrifying to me. I don't like it. I'll protect my friends and my family and whatever I can do to do that. But this has gone off the rails. That's my opinion.
It has. But I mean, I think the point to be had here is that the same government that's forcing us into this Green New Deal, if you will,
they are
the same government that's been perpetually polluting at a greater scale than anything else.
Yeah.
You know what the solution to that is, though? We just need to spend more money. Guys, if we just give them a few $1 trillion more, it's underfunded. So our schools, our military, just really everything in the government's underfunded. If we throw a few trillion more at it, they're gonna fix it.
You heard it from Kevin first, folks. You should voluntarily pay a 90% income tax rate.
That's right. It's all voluntary anyway. It's fine. Just do your thing.
No,
you could give your money to Liberty Memes Foundation, or you can give it to the government where they're going to turn it into stuff that would be blown up.
And that's one of the great things about the Liberty Memes Foundation.
They aren't blowing up people overseas. Yes, that is one of the great things about them.
I know for a fact that the turnaround on the dollar there goes directly to the individual, minus like travel costs and paperwork fees for vehicles, right?
So 96% of every Hillary Clinton's foundations goes to salaries. You're saying if we juxtapose that with Liberty Memes, what happens?
I think Liberty Memes is averaging a cost of about $3,000 a month to individuals who work for them.
Wild. That's wild. What's wrong with those guys?
Right? They're not greedy. How dare they?
Yeah.
Fair enough.
And I can tell you that the only people that have been paid for the Mobility Independence Foundation is the webmaster, the person who built the website.
You have no choice but to pay the webmaster. That's the perils of the modern internet.
Well, right? Sometimes it's what you got to do. Sometimes you got to pay for stuff to get it done.
Yeah.
Since you're talking about cash for clunkers and we're talking about the rollover rate of wheelchairs earlier, we started this foundation last October. We just hit a year old. And in March of 22, which was the same year it founded, we discovered it after the fact that WBUR out of Massachusetts was reporting statistics from studies that show that 50% of all wheelchairs, it's manual and power, break down every 6 months.
Wow.
Now imagine if that was that car you mentioned, right? What would happen to that line? What would happen to their customer base?
I'd throw it into the ocean myself if it was breaking down every 6 months.
They'd stop buying them, right?
Oh, yeah.
But
so that's a point about free markets, right? Like there's no competition because we're propping up wheelchair producers and getting a shoddy product. I don't know if there's a better libertarian message than that right there,
The only other thing that could be better is my Burger King analogy that I got to make when I was speaking at the Meet the Candidates event last week. So I had this nice little card thing for my petitioners when they went around, and it's got things like honesty and transparency on it. And my spiel to the people who attended to Meet the Candidates was that this is a Burger King commercial. Every candidate tries to put forward these qualities in one way or another. They rarely say it as directly as I did, and they want you to believe that they're for you when they're not. And it's
a virtue
just like
signaling.
Burger King, right? You see that commercial, It's that big, beautiful, juicy-looking patty with vegetables full of color, and every sesame seed is perfectly placed. And
Oh,
you get
yeah.
out the other side of the drive-through, you've got this flat, greasy, colorless thing that's not anything like what you imagined when you first saw that commercial.
I'm yes, it's a sales strategy, right? Like I get it.
It's actually a psychological trick, because you are more likely to be satisfied with that flat, greasy, flavorless thing devoid of proper nutrition if you first saw that commercial.
Right. Well, yeah, you assume you've projected that this is going to be good and delicious. And I say this as a marketer who does these things.
Yeah. I felt as though he was attacking you there, Kevin. Let's have it.
I did feel personally attacked. I was going to let him make his point, but it's all right.
I didn't know you worked for Burger King, but can we have
No,
the
I don't work for
kangaroo
Burger
meat back?
King.
It
No.
tastes better.
Kevin
No.
does.
I actually, despite having a Burger King, like no kidding, like 200 yards from my house, I never go there. It's fine. It's okay. They was permanently burned in my head is like the Burger King Whopper song going off like 10 times during like Bills games, particularly after the Damar Hamlin game, and just like, oh yeah, so the ambulance is coming on the field. We'll be right back. And then Whopper, Whopper, Whopper. It's like what a transition.
You had to mention the Bills. That's a penchant for me now. New York State cut services to child and human welfare by almost exactly what they decided to soon after subsidize the new stadium for the Buffalo Bills.
All right, hold on, because I think you're understating that government has to make choices regardless about how much money they steal from us and where they dedicate it to. So please reiterate what you just said.
So the cuts to child and human services in New York State quite nearly equate to the subsidies given to produce the new Buffalo Bills stadium.
How freaking virtuous is that, bro?
And I can tell you from personal knowledge that our welfare offices, our nonprofits that serve those with disabilities, the homeless and the like, are all getting funding cuts.
Yeah. Well, we got money for that.
At least we'll have a sales tax revenue generator and a non-championship team because our athletes' tax is the highest in the country.
But don't forget,
we don't have enough talent ever.
Don't forget the degradation to the surrounding communities. That's a statistical fact with all of these subsidized.
That's irrelevant, bud. You don't get it.
And also, you're yeah. So, but besides the fact that I am a Bills fan, even though I hate the subsidies too, but you're forgetting the fact that Governor Hochul.
Kevin, I see your hat.
I know.
I like the Bills, man. I want my team to do good. They were hard hitting, not like wild men back in the 90s under Marv Levy. They did the best they could with everything they had, and it was awesome.
That's right, Tim. They did the best they could with your tax dollars.
I want my tax dollars going to a winning football team.
Yeah, at least they could do if we're gonna pay for it is win a Super Bowl. Like that's the least they could do.
They're not spending enough, man. They're not.
We gotta subsidize them more. No, but remember, Kathy Hochul said that she took the money from the Senecas. So she's like, oh, we took it from them, and that's what paid for it too. It did. Money's not real, guys.
Did she just slaughter indigenous people to prop up the quote Buffalo Bills?
Yeah, she just stole. It was a settlement. to prop up the organization that her husband profited from. That's all.
And father.
Kevin, that's just coincidence. Yeah. I don't even understand how you could go there. Look, guys, we live in an absurd time. Our timeline is absurd. I don't know what other word there is for absurd. Doesn't go far enough, but that's our reality. This is an absurdity.
Kind of.
I'm going to backtrack here in just a second. I'm looking for an email.
All right.
We were talking about Debman and his business Rapadapt. If you're watching this online, Rapadapt does machining and prototyping, product design and development, electronics prototyping, CNC machining, 3D printing, and welding. It is a business. It is a for-profit business, and they do good work. Their shop is what a shop should be. Tim, when you walk into any business and the shop is perfectly clean, what's the first thing you think?
Oh, that they're actually not making enough stuff, and I'm embarrassed for them.
Right. But when you
Like,
see a dirty
something's going
shop,
on here. You got time to clean. You're not being productive, which I'm not sure I'm right about that, but
well,
I
Devin's
think
shop
I am.
was not very clean. It was well used, and you could tell that all the equipment gets used. They do work.
That's that. I also want the guy who's running everything to be slightly frazzled and to go off track every 5 seconds when I'm talking to him. Like, I want him to have ADHD, but not quite ADHD. Like, I want him to be able to answer my questions, but also, like, I want him to be losing it because a machine, he hears something wrong with one of his machines in the background. Like, that's what I want.
That's a very specific vibe.
It is, right? It is.
Like, I know exactly what you're talking about, but
So
You do. I know you do. Like, we get it. It's weird. Like, we're at this. We share a vibe, guys. Like, that's a reality. And for the people that are listening and spending time with us this afternoon, we share this vibe, and that's wonderful.
A good shop is typically only clean for a few minutes at a time, or at most overnight.
right.
Sure.
Like, I'll walk to a lot shop first thing in the morning. Like, usually clutters, not like they pick up the clutter on the floor and want to trip over nothing, and then everything kind of looks well used. Is that what?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's just a kind of a layer of dust on everything, and
Yeah, and everything's making noise. Everything in the shop is making noise, and you found the right business to work with.
So another little personal note about our trip to Rochester. Remember, I told you that I had invited a couple of RIT students who were also disabled.
Sure. Did you have a garbage plate though? I want to check on that.
I did not.
Don't.
No, actually, we had barbecue at Jim Dayton's.
All right.
So they're in manual wheelchairs, and Dustin and I are in power wheelchairs. And I had never seen Lake Ontario. So we went from his shop to a nice, like, touristy park with an old pier. It even had the old mooring where you tie the ropes, where you can walk out into the lake, kind of. We took turns towing the manual chairs, 2 at a time. We both have wheelchairs that can tow 2 other wheelchairs at speed. We had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
No, and the wheelchair he uses for his shop chair actually has Omega Trek parts.
So like the differential transmission.
No, not the transmission, but he had the caster wheels, which are interesting. They're a lot like a landing gear. They've got one fork.
Right.
All right.
I mean, actually, so we never got into like so some of the goal here with like your foundation is like, all right, people should be able to like find open source manuals for like some of these different parts, right? So if like they need to like make or modify something on their chair, like regardless of what it is, like the goal is to crowdsource or make open source the ability and the knowledge to be able to modify and repair chairs to fit their situation.
Right, and it's also to make sure that there are designs out there that are simple.
Right.
It's a very simple design other than the transmission. And beyond that, we're also working angles to get parts manufactured. I was talking about James Beck. He owns an electronics manufacturing company. So going forward, the motor controller and the HID, we can actually create a company to produce them. And same with the transmission. We can use companies like Devon's or other machine shops to produce them. Frames we can do. The battery technology we really hit on. Are you guys familiar with LiFePO4 batteries?
No.
They're lithium.
Are they affiliated with Tesla?
Kind of, yeah.
The Tesla batteries.
They are lithium iron phosphate batteries, which means they don't have a lot of PFAS chemicals, if you're familiar, the Teflon chemical that kills people. the Department of Defense has these huge funds set aside for when they mishandle them. That's what your standard lithium batteries used as a electrolyte. Lithium iron phosphate batteries don't need that. They're much more recyclable. And here's the thing in terms of wheelchairs, because I'm sitting on a pair of lithium iron phosphate batteries right now.
Okay.
They're less than half the weight of lead acid gel cell.
Right. So that's.
And you're saying they're more recyclable, and we get into this whole cleaner thing that we were kind of talking about earlier.
I'm not done. There's more. ShamWow, man. ShamWow.
But wait, there's more.
So on a 75 amp hour lead acid sealed gel cell battery, you might be able to reap half of the power it's capable of storing. On a lithium iron phosphate, you can reap it all.
Okay, I want that for my impact gun. Like, that's what I want. I want this battery in a smaller size for my impact gun.
Well, right now, you want this battery for anything that you can use a battery for. They are durable. We have seen product testing videos where somebody shot one with a shotgun, and all it did was fizzle a little bit. We saw somebody drop one off a building onto a concrete slab, and the concrete slab broke. Battery was fine. Yeah. They have a battery management system on board, so they don't undercharge or overcharge, and they kick off when it's too hot or too cold, so you don't damage the battery.
That's what I was going to ask. Like, it's a big thing with like electric bikes. Like, I worry about that charging my battery. They can overheat super easily and cause fires.
As a solar guy, I'm familiar with this problem as well. You have to have switches installed between what you're saving as electric and what you're generating as electric, right? You have to turn it off or burn somebody's, yeah, exactly.
Right. It's basically an onboard computer. That's what it does. It tells it to stop charging before it's too late. It tells it to not over discharge before it's too late. It tells it to shut itself off if it's too cold or too hot. That's important. Now, I haven't gotten to the main point. The Mobility Independence Foundation, through the benevolence of myself and our vice president, now has 3 sets from 3 different companies of lithium iron phosphate batteries in these wheelchairs. Every last one of them comes with an 11-year warranty.
What?
Yeah.
Hang on. What?
That's pretty good.
That's wild. I've never heard of an 11-year warranty on a battery. Right. Like, guys, your car battery, 3 years, 5 years if you get a good one. Your impact guns and your tools, the batteries on them are like, you break them out of the package and the warranty's done. Like, so we're talking 11 years.
Right. Now, in February of this year, I bought the first pair, the high-end pair. I paid $1,000 a piece, $2,000 for a set of batteries, because it takes 2 batteries per chair. And at that 11-year warranty, I did the math versus how fast I go through lead acids. I'm saving $5,200.
Long-term thinking is not. Let's see if you can break that down, because long-term thinking, people don't understand per year costs. Yep. Like when I used to sell roofs, Queeter, it'd be like, hey, I'll get you the 50-year shingles because per year, that's like $9. All right. So like versus a 30-year roof, which is like $100. So do that. Help people understand that.
So what is value, right? About 6 months prior to purchasing those batteries, I bought a new set of lead acid batteries. It cost me $700 for both batteries. Then I paid $2,000 for LiFePO batteries that are going to give me 11 years instead of spending $700 every year.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. We're back to ShamWow. The latest set of batteries I purchased cost $550, not $2,000. Same rating. The other interesting thing about LiFePO versus lead acid, both rated for, let's say, 12.8 volts, right? And we have fancy little things on our phones where we can read the output and input when we discharge and charge the batteries, right? So with the lead acid battery, when you push forward on the joystick as it's using, that voltage drops. And then when you meet resistance like rough ground or a hill, you feel the wheelchair hesitate, struggle, not have the power and speed it did on, say, flat, smooth ground. With a Lifebow battery, it stays at 12.8 volts.
No way.
When I got the first pair installed and I went outside, you know those little gutters by the median between the sidewalk and the road.
Yes.
It's not really a curb; it's kind of angled, but it's still kind of steep on one side.
Yeah.
That was my first test. 30 seconds out the door, see how it does over that, right? And I took it like I would with lead acids, full speed, expecting hesitation and just come over it nice. I caught error.
You must have been in your glory, bro.
Oh, it was fun. It wasn't a lot of error. It was a couple of inches. But
no, thank God. No, dude, like, stop.
Right.
Like, people got to know your reality. Had you caught too much air, that could have been a disaster, right? Like, let's be honest.
Till you hit.
Be fun while flying, just
like
when you land is the problem.
Yeah.
Every fall is a lot of exciting fun and adrenaline until that point at which you hit. I speak from experience.
Yes.
But so that was my first clue, right? I caught like 2 or 3 inches of air on something that I expected to struggle over. Then later, in the appropriate weather, I took it on the washed out tractor trail in the hills behind my house. You know what those are, Tim.
Yes.
They're uphill when they wash out. There's like a lot of little boulders and it's rough ground. And tractors can do it fine, but imagine a wheelchair that does that, right?
No, I can't imagine it. Like, I've seen you do things with your wheelchair that is like, and you sent me private video, so I don't know how much we're supposed to talk about, but I've seen the stuff that you're able to do with your wheelchair that you guys, this is where we get into this libertarian notion. Queter picked his wheelchair. If Queter went through the government, he would have ended up with a piece of dangerous garbage that probably would have killed him, right? Like, we've had this conversation. You would probably, if you went with the government offered solution, you'd probably be dead, right?
Right. So what happened was when they denied me for this chair, they came back and offered me a range of wheelchairs that I could get. And being the most familiar with my condition, which is rather intricate and individual,
Sure.
I could look at those chairs and say, well, I'm gonna be bedridden within a few months if I use that, because they're going to limit my ability to use my body. Right? A wheelchair should give you the ability to use what you got. That's the point.
Right.
You don't get a motorized wheelchair to sit there and do nothing but watch cable and take prescriptions. You get a wheelchair so you can get out and about, go to the family events, go down the road to the store. Maybe, oh my God, I'm sorry. I know this is like way out of line, but just maybe we want to have a job.
Correct. Why wouldn't you?
If people need purpose, disabled people do.
Yeah.
And we talked about the breakdown rate of wheelchairs. It's over 50% nationwide. If you're talking about veterans, it's over 88%.
Because they're guys that are coming from something that they want to be able to, like you, they want to be able to perform life. Okay, that's all they want to do. They want to participate in life. And so they're going to break that garbage that they're forced to take. They're going to break.
We literally train them to do things and get things done.
Right.
Correct. Yeah, thank you. That's
and then they come back with a disability and we give them a piece of crap that they can't get out the door with.
Mm-hmm.
They can't go over the threshold without breaking it, right? Isn't that something we're reflecting back on from our earlier conversation?
Now, Tim, I know you've got a hard-working background, and you're probably still working hard at one thing or another.
I hate myself for it, but that's what I'm doing.
So what would happen if tomorrow you couldn't work like that anymore? How would you feel? Forget the money, forget the bills, personally, emotionally. What would happen if your options were cable TV and prescription pills?
I would smash my wheelchair right into the ground. like that's what you're getting at, and I know where you're going, and that's what I would do, right? Like, because I'd be like, all right, well, I can't get over my threshold in my house, and I would keep trying until the front wheels fell off. Like, that's it, man.
That's my childhood.
Yeah, you all right, you get it. I know you get it. I know why you asked the question, and it's a real government does not understand individual needs, and we're moving towards a government that refuses to understand individual needs. They're literally moving towards refusing to understand that we're not a hive mind, hive body collective, that we have an existence that's important to us and we want to live our lives the way we live them.
Right. And the solution is to create stuff for people to be able to empower themselves to get mobile, to find their own solutions, to pick things that work for themselves. Because as you said, everyone's unique. Everyone has unique situations. And so like if we can empower people to do that, to make something that's going to work for their situation, you're going to end up with a lot more happiness and a lot less dependence.
That's absolutely a fact. And that's why going forward, our designs are specifically looking to be modular.
Yeah.
That means that individual.
I want to ask about that. Like, are you going to be able to like, get stuff that's going to be able to adapt and fit those individual needs? That's awesome.
So our embedded software, I'm not the technical guy. I don't claim to be the smartest person in the room with this. But we're already looking at the programming of the wheelchair for things like speed and handling to be capable of being opened up. Right. Not necessarily opened up immediately. We do believe that we do believe that you should have those options. And I can speak to this personally with a very good anecdote. You ever been in a parking lot when a teenager drove through it like 80 miles an hour?
Right.
You ever have to make 5 feet really quickly to save your life because of it?
Yeah. So
if wheelchairs are regulated down to 5 miles per hour, man.
Right.
So shouldn't you have the option to go 10?
Yeah, so you should be able to get out of the way. But, it may be like that's not the right solution for everybody, right?
Correct.
And you got to get used to that, right? Or if you're talking about a child or something, okay, like maybe they've got to get used to being able to operate that way.
That's why actually Devin came in handy for this. We were talking about this concept of somehow being able to record and understanding the usage of the chair by a user to understand whether or not to give them the ability at some point to open that up. And we've hit on a couple of things. We've hit on something like a speed boost. You push a button and you get 30 feet of extra speed. Get out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
Furthermore, software that learns.
Figure out preferences.
If you prove to the algorithm, if you will, I don't even know if I'm using the right word, that you're capable, then it should be able to potentially automatically either notify us or just open it up for you.
Interesting.
And it used to be, back in the day when I was younger, you could have your wheelchair tech come and reprogram your chair for various speed aspects. And they had to bring a proprietary module to hook into the chair to do that. But we think that a USB port in a laptop is more than enough.
Right.
Can I jump in, guys? I'm sorry I missed part of the conversation, but we're getting into this right to repair issue, right, Queeter? What do you want to? You got any words for that?
Yes. So every wheelchair
you lobbing you softballs, bro. I'm not even trying to test you. I'm just lobbing you softballs. Knock this one out of the park.
Every wheelchair you get through an insurance company or government healthcare, which is underwritten by insurance companies, comes with a warranty. And often enough, that warranty is void if you touch it with a screwdriver.
Oh my! God, I hate that stuff. Excuse my language.
Right. And now the systems that provide repair have delays and waits.
Of course they do. Of course, because they can mark it up. They can charge exorbitant fees for simple stuff. Change a filter. Like the right to repair, you can't even change a filter on a big diesel tractor, right? Like you have to go to the John Deere dealer. So, Queeter, we're like, it's amazing. It's just the government sells access to our freedom, and it drives me crazy.
So here's a part you're probably going to like. the concepts that we've been throwing around. One, we're going to have to get certain parts manufactured. We're going to need a network of probably small businesses. Oh my God, you're going to support small businesses.
I know. Kill those.
across the
Kill those
country
guys. Small
to
businesses.
actually-
We don't want none of that.
To actually do this, right? And we were talking about government money, right? And how wasteful it is. Now, I have a question for you. If it's a technical college, would you want its government money being spent on building a cheesy little robot or modularly producing the correct wheelchair for an individual?
Anything the government can do to make our lives better, I support. I just want to take the opposite side of you.
So this isn't actually the government doing. What we're doing is reaching out to organizations like RIT. One of their employees actually proposed that we make this a capstone project for them. That's where their coming graduates actually do a project that assists us, and that's a big deal.
Okay.
Now, if we're to be robbed of our tax dollars, as we are, and those tax dollars are to be apportioned to universities, say, and we have the ability to make some connections and shake some hands and have those dollars pay for something that's also costing us money, right? The students learn and the wheelchair's built and provided and it's custom.
Right. It seems like one of those, like Michael Scott used to say, a win, 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 win.
The only people who lose is still the taxpayers because it is wrong to steal money. However,
they're investing it.
if it's going to happen,
money, steal it for good things. Like, this isn't war.
We're not
This isn't
dropping
the
bombs on
broken
kids.
windows fallacy. Steal it for durable goods that benefit people for a lifetime.
On that note, because it's not on the radio anymore, and this is just the online version, I will tell you that my personal plan is to drive one of these things through a wall that is on fire.
I can't wait. I can't wait for that.
So the interesting thing here is,
He'd do it
safety
too, guys.
standards
Like,
in the
this is Queeter we're talking about.
the FDA regulated safety standards on these things in the current industry for profit as it is are terrible. It's horrible how dangerous these things are. And so it is our prerogative to blow those safety standards out of the water with what we're doing. And it's actually not that hard to do. But to that fact, I keep telling my team, I'm going to drive this through a wall that's on fire.
Perfect.
And now they're very passionate about making sure I don't die.
Right. So, they better be designed well.
Right.
So you got to be successful. You got to go right through.
But even our electronics are going to be watertight, impact resistant, and EMF resistant, electromagnetic frequencies. That is a thing. I've had that happen.
Right, just some signal messes with your controls and
the wheelchair takes off.
Ah, man.
But hey guys, I got to get going. I have another date tonight, so.
All right.
Yeah.
Good talking to you.
You too. Thank you for having me. And for everybody out there, number one cause right now is Devin's accessible vehicle.
All right, so I'm in for $100 on that. I hope some people throw some money at it. I think that would be great. Do not disconnect automatically. We've got like little recording issues. We'll go end the broadcast and then the program has to catch up to us. All right, brother?
Yeah. Hold on for 1 second. All right. Have a good night, folks, or afternoon, whatever time it is. Bye.